Well, I'm Blanca Cobb, and I'm so happy to be here today. I am an internationally recognized body language expert. I've been doing media for the past almost 9 years now, and I've been on big shows like the Today Show and the Steve Harvey Show and the Doctors and Dr. Oz and Dr. Drew, where I share my expertise about body language and detecting deception. So that way people understand the people that they're interacting with and what they're feeling and how they're behaving and get a sense of who you are and what you bring into that conversation.
Thank you, Blanca. We have tried to connect. We actually connected a few weeks back, but I was having some technology issues. We've upgraded our technology, and now our schedules have finally meshed. And I've got pages of notes here that I'm probably not even going to look at because I just want to have a conversation. My favorite thing about
Perfect.
doing this is just having conversations with people. And I apologize up front. I will ask you some of the same questions that I've seen you on your Instagram lives and I've seen you on other people's shows and on TV shows because that's who you are and what you do. But From the Hart podcast is really more about the why people do
Mm,
what they do. We're
yeah,
going to post links to your website and I'm going to brag. I have been bragging about you, by the way. I tell everybody that I
thank
get to
you.
interview Blanca and I'm excited. Let me just start. What have you learned in the last couple of years, and not even just COVID, but just over the last couple of years in your role that either has surprised you about people or maybe about yourself? Has anything come to mind that you're just like, wow, I thought I knew that, but that just totally rocked me and twisted me around?
It's one thing studying people and studying how the mind works, because I have a psychology, excuse me, a master's in psychology. But it's another thing to see people in real life and how they act and how they behave. And one thing that does surprise me is that people lie, but a lot of times they don't want to lie. They wiggle around with the truth,
Hmm.
they manipulate it, they twist it, they turn it, they tweak it just a little bit. And it's because people are scared. A lot of times people lie because they're scared. They know what they're doing is wrong, but they don't
Scared
want
of
to
the
give that
reaction from
up.
the other person or scared? What are they scared of?
They are scared of getting caught, the reaction
Okay.
of the other person, the consequences. People want what they want. And if they have to be sneaky in order to get it, a lot of people will be sneaky in order to get what they want. A lot of sneakiness requires lying because you're trying to throw somebody off guard, trying to get them off the scent, if you will. And it's just that the extremes that people will go to hide their behavior is quite
Hmm.
surprising. And another thing that has been surprising to me is a lot of times when we think of betrayal, we always think of a partner betrayal, a lover, a spouse, but there's a lot of family betrayal. And that's been a bit of an eye opener to me. One could challenge me and say, "Hey, Blanca, haven't you watched the movies?" Yes, I watch movies and TV shows,
Yeah.
right? But it always seems like it's somebody else, or what you see on shows. They seem to be so exaggerated. But you know what? A lot of it isn't, because so
Sure.
many people in real life, everyday people, go through a tremendous amount of family betrayal. It's just astounding to me.
So can we stay on that for a minute? As
Sure.
you know, my core job during the day is I work with family-owned businesses. I run the Center
Mm,
for Family Business at Cal State University at Fullerton. I do a lot of consulting with family companies. That's the pool I swim in most of the time. So there's a lot of statistics, and I'm not going to go into those, but there's a lot of reasons why family businesses fail. 70% of them don't make it through generation one to generation
mm.
number two, and then the numbers get worse. It's like marriages. The more marriages you have, the less likely it is it's going to last, right? So I'm on
Right.
marriage number two, and we've been married 28 years. So I think our numbers are good,
That's
but
awesome.
a lot of family businesses don't. Like I said, only 30%, if that, make it to generation number two,
Mhm.
and a lot of reasons it is poor communication, maybe some dishonesty. From your experience living in that family arena that you just talked about, what, if any, experience with family businesses do you have? First of all, I don't even know.
Mhm.
And second of all, if you do, can you share maybe some of the things that you've seen that have caused some of these family businesses to not succeed?
That's a great question. And I don't have a lot of experience with family owned businesses, but I can just tell you about businesses in general. And really,
Okay.
what happens when you have a partner in business, it almost is like having family, because you
Sure.
trust each other so much. You're sharing intimate details of what's working, what's not working, what's happening with the company. So it really, that partnership in business can really turn into almost a familial relationship.
Sure. Absolutely. So, okay. So not the, my mom used to tell me your ears turn red when you're lying, or, I know there's a lot of, people will look away or things like that. What are some telltale? I know nothing's 100% or 0% in life, I
Exactly.
don't think. Maybe, but what
Death
are
and
some
taxes,
things
I
that
think, are
you
100%.
death and taxes, I think we're all, well, taxes is optional, but there's consequences too.
Right, right,
So
right,
we,
right.
we, we can't escape death, I don't think so far. Although you and I have to this point, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But what are some things to look for? Let's just coach some of these business leaders for a moment.
Mhm.
If you're talking about maybe an employee or a partner or a customer or a vendor who may or may not be completely truthful with you, what are some things to look for?
The first thing you want to do is establish someone's baseline behavior. This is how they typically act. This is how they typically present themselves. So, do they look at you in the eye when they're talking? Or if you ask them a question, do they continue to look at you, or do they look up? Do they look down? Are they animated? How are they using their voice?
Hmm.
Do they move their hands? Are they a hand talker, or are they really stiff? Do they have a scowl on their face? What is it about them that makes them them? And that is super important, because when there's a change in that baseline
Hmm.
behavior, that's your aha moment. But here's the deal:
Okay.
you don't know what's causing that behavior change. What happens a lot of times is that people automatically assume someone is hiding information, someone is lying. Not necessarily. And if you make those automatic assumptions, you can really destroy an otherwise healthy relationship. So you really
Sure.
have to be careful. So baseline behavior is super important. One thing that trips up a lot of people is that they think one body language gesture means that somebody's lying. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. This
Like if they
isn't
don't look you in the eye automatically, it's like, oh, well,
right.
he's got shifty eyes. Well, maybe he's just thinking.
Maybe he's thinking, maybe contacts are dry. You have no
Yeah.
idea what's going on. But this isn't Pinocchio.
Yeah,
Pinocchio,
exactly. No
everyone
nose is
knows.
going to just
Right,
grow. Right.
right. If that really happened to us, no one would be able to walk into a house or into their
Walk through a
car,
door. Yeah, exactly.
because
Yeah,
our noses would be long.
exactly.
Everyone lies at some point. I always get challenged. I don't lie. Okay,
Hmm.
keep
You
believing
just
that.
did. The minute
Right.
you say that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean,
It's like the pastor who asked you to raise your hand in church if you sinned in the last 24 hours and your hand doesn't go up. It's like, well, you just sinned because you just lied.
right.
Yeah.
But here's the deal, though. Some people have different definitions of what lie means. For
Yeah.
example, someone who exaggerates, they may not feel that's a lie. Who cares if I really caught an 8-inch fish? Or I'm not a
Yeah.
fisherman, obviously, or a
Yeah.
fisher
Nor am I.
person.
Yeah.
So I'm,
Yeah.
I'm making
Yeah.
this up. It doesn't even sound right. But a 10-pound fish, who
Yeah.
cares if I said it? If it was 20 pounds and it was really 10, nobody needs to know. The point is, I caught a fish. So you see how somebody can
Yeah.
justify that lie in their own mind, where somebody else would be like, that's a lie. And you're like, nah, it was a fish. Doesn't matter how much it weighed. Who cares what I said?
So what would you do? So let's just say, for example, you're the CEO of Blanca Cobb International.
Mhm.
Might be a thing. I don't know. But let's just say you are and you have 1,000 employees or 10 employees.
Mhm.
You suspect because you've seen the baseline. Let's say your core direct report, the person that maybe is your number two person in the organization. You've worked with that person for a long time. You've established the baseline, as you said. You really know how they behave pretty much in every situation. But then suddenly you start to see a shift.
Mhm.
Now, I know you're a nonverbal communications expert. I don't know what your expertise is when it comes to confronting people who might now be lying or dishonest. What approach would you take as their supervisor or their manager to, before you rock the boat so much that it sinks and now
Mhm.
like you've just said, you've totally, blown up the relationship? How do we approach someone where we suspect there might be an issue with truth without blowing up the relationship? What are your thoughts there?
Okay, well, first, part of my expertise is in detecting deception. So, body
Yeah.
language and detecting deception are both in my wheelhouse. So, just because you see a change in someone's baseline behavior, that's where you have to do some investigations. This is where you're going to ask questions. Have you ever seen the show Columbo?
Oh
It's a
yeah.
very
Yeah.
old show. And what I love about, is it Peter Falk? Is that who that?
Peter Falk.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Yeah,
The
exactly. Yeah.
actor. What I loved about his character is that he always pretended to be dumb. And I love that because it's so non-threatening. It's like, hey, wait, help me understand. I'm just not getting this. 2 plus 2 isn't equaling up to 4. Can you explain that for me? But you come across non-threatening and then you ask genuine questions, because if you reach it from a point, or you approach it from the point that you want to understand, that's very disarming. When you come across like you're a police officer and this is an interrogation and you almost have like this flashlight in their face because you want them to tell you the truth, defenses go up and they're going to lie. It's natural when people feel threatened, right? So they may not be physically
Sure.
threatened, but maybe they feel like their job is threatened. Then what are they going to do? Defenses go up because they're trying to protect themselves. So you ask questions and then listen to the answers. A lot of times you can catch somebody lying in what they're saying or what they're not saying.
Yeah.
You pay attention to the verbs that they're using, the tenses of the verbs. You pay attention to the pronouns that they're using. You pay attention to their own vocabulary, even emotions in their story. Where they're placing emotions in their story tells you a lot about whether their story is truthful or not.
Interesting. So if they start using language, or like you said, just if there's a major shift in how they're communicating, or the nonverbal, suddenly the hands are all over, they're not looking you in the eye, and they normally do, then those are some things to watch for. Sounds like
Right,
what
they're
you're saying.
absolutely things to watch
Yeah.
for. And then if you have any evidence, if you have reports that are missing or things in a report that just don't add up, you don't present it at first. Again, you really want to play Columbo. You just want to gather information and gather information in a disarming way. And then when you present information, this is what I'm seeing. It's not matching up to what you're saying. Help me understand. What's missing here? What's missing in this
Yeah.
document? And then be quiet. The biggest problem that people have when they're busting liars is that they won't shut up.
Yeah. Trying to prove their point, or trying
Yes.
to, we get on that verbal attack, it sounds like.
Yes. You have to listen. You have to
Yeah.
listen to what somebody's saying. That's how they trap themselves, is through their
Sure.
words.
Same process for familial relationships, whether it's mother daughter, like I know you have a daughter at home, or
And I have a son.
husband wife, or and a son too. I've seen the shenanigans on your website with you and your daughter. I haven't seen things with your son, so that's cool.
Well, that's
Very
because he
cool.
doesn't
So
want to be on social media.
he doesn't want to be on. Yeah, there you go.
He doesn't have
Fair enough.
he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. What? Every blue moon, you'll see a photo of him.
Yeah,
But he'd rather just stay behind the spotlight, which is fine. That's
yeah.
his choice and I
I've
respect it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of friends and acquaintances who've never been on social media. One friend of mine, and obviously I won't name names, but he goes, "Yeah, I have too many ex-girlfriends that might track me down, so I think I'm going to just stay off entirely to protect my family. It's probably better if I don't go on there." So
That's so funny.
very cool. And that's an interesting thing too. Social media, I hadn't planned on bringing that up at all, but since we're there right now, obviously in the last 10 plus years, that's become a massive thing, and it just continues to grow. Clubhouse and
Mhm.
Instagram and Twitter and all, I can name them all. There's more than I can possibly think of. Probably a lot of deceit people always talk about, people get depressed when they're on Facebook so much, for example, because it looks like everybody else's life is so wonderful. Take
Mhm.
me into your experience with, you're a nonverbal communications expert, but I know that also means, from your background in psychology and your years of experience, you probably have a little bit of wisdom in the written word as well, in deciphering truth versus stretching the truth versus just bold-faced lies.
Mhm.
Can you talk at all to our audience that uses social media a lot, or maybe doesn't for this reason, when you can determine if someone's stretching the truth, being honest, etc., when it comes to maybe posts on social media or written word in an email or what have you?
Sure. It's like what I was talking about earlier when you're analyzing what somebody's saying and what they're not saying. So that's not only for the verbal word, but it's also for the written word. And when you're on social
Mm-hmm.
media, what happens a lot of times is people forget what they post. So
Yeah.
if you look over post over time, you can pick up on some inconsistencies
Yeah.
if they're not being honest. So that's clue number one. And then if people use words like always and never, okay, are there situations where it's always
It's like
this
the
way?
100%, 0% we talked about a
Right.
minute ago. That doesn't really
That
exist.
doesn't really exist. So you pay
Yeah.
attention to that. Or there's always these fluffy words, like everything is beautiful and wonderful and
Yeah.
fantastic. And okay, There's never been a rainy
Yeah.
day in their life.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. My life is perfect and your life
yes.
isn't. And so
Hmm. So the best
what
way is that people will forget what they say over time. So when you look at
yeah.
posts, then you can see some differences.
Abraham Lincoln is famous for a lot of quotes, and I don't know if he said any of them, but we attribute a lot of them to him because, you give a quote to a dead president, and it's like, whoa, that's
Right.
awesome. But he said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said
But it
because
is
truth is
truth.
truth.
The truth is a
And that's like,
truth. But there's a
yeah,
caveat to that,
hmm
is that memory over time isn't the same.
yeah,
We grow older. We forget. There's certain elements of life that were so important at one time of your life, but as you transition to another moment of your life, you may not remember all the details. And that's okay. What happens with people a lot of times is they're like, you said you had a blue shirt on, and now you're telling me you have a yellow shirt on. Which is it?
right.
Well, if it's been 5 years, who cares? You just have to really think about what they're talking about and how relevant and pertinent it is to understand whether they're telling you the truth or not. So people
And we
can be
remember
a little
things,
overboard.
yeah, and we remember things through the lens we're looking through today.
Yes,
I can look
absolutely.
back. We talked a minute ago. I was married for 6 years before, and
Mhm,
the marriage ended. You know, obviously something went really, really wrong because the
mhm.
marriage ended. I look back 29, 30 years later, and not that I would want to be back in that relationship, but I don't remember the way I lived it then. Not that I only remember the good, but yeah,
Mhm.
was I wearing a blue shirt or a red shirt? I don't remember.
Right.
I'll say blue because it's my favorite color today. I might say
Hmm.
red then because, oh yeah, I was at an Angel game and they were, who knows? So
Exactly.
yeah,
So that's
some details just really don't matter.
right. And that's what you have to remember is that some details don't matter. And if it really doesn't
Yeah.
take away from the credibility of the story, then who cares? That's just being
Yeah.
too nitpicky.
Have you had an opportunity to use your profession and your skills in the court of law? Have people come to you to ask you to, watch my witness, whether it's in the pretrial planning or in the trial itself? Have you used that? And again, you probably can't go into specifics on cases, but I'm assuming that's probably an area where your expertise is utilized from time to time.
Not in that capacity. I've had police officers and attorneys call me and we've chatted, but me actually being in a courtroom helping in that manner, no, that has not happened. But I have consulted with law enforcement
Yeah.
and attorneys who reached out.
I would think if I were an attorney and I was, grilling my client before the trial, I'd probably want to bring you in to just watch my client and say, okay, you're shifting here, and people, not everybody on the jury is going to be a nonverbal communications expert, if anyone.
Right.
But are there basic things that you? Well, I'm sure there are. Stupid question. I'll probably edit that out. But obviously, there's things you catch that the typical person wouldn't catch. We've talked a little bit about the shifty eyes or the change in their baseline and how they communicate.
Mhm.
What advice do you give to people if people ask about just? I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question without kind of sounding redundant. Are there some core two or three things that really stand out when you're like just you get a few minutes to coach a CEO or coach somebody beyond just the watch their baseline? Because what if you haven't had a chance to establish a baseline
Mhm.
with someone? It's the first interaction with somebody. You have no idea how they normally communicate.
No, but you can establish someone's baseline within 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 10.
Okay,
You don't have to know somebody for years in order to get a sense of how they typically present themselves.
got it. Okay.
Mhm.
Are you a big believer in the power of first impressions?
I am.
Are you?
I
Why?
am a very big believer in the power of first impressions. The unfortunate thing is everybody has an off moment from time to time. However, since first impressions are so powerful, it's so hard to erase that bad first impression. Over time, though, when you're still interacting with that person and they keep showing you a better side that is consistent, then you can be like, okay, maybe they just weren't feeling well the first time I met them. Maybe there was something on their mind, because you believe in patterns of
Yeah,
behavior. That's what happens with us. We
sure.
look for patterns of behavior, at least I do. I look for patterns of behavior, and that speaks more loudly than a one off. Everyone has a bad moment, a bad day. We're human. And we have to still remember that we're human and we have those human elements. We're imperfect as we're supposed to be.
Sure. So we're in an era right now where everybody's wearing a mask. I know you
Yeah.
have a new ebook out on how to interpret nonverbal when you only see from the nose up. Can you talk about that a little bit? First of all, the ebook itself, but then, yeah, we're most of us, I know myself, and many are now vaccinated. That doesn't mean we're going to stop wearing masks, although I'd love to.
Right.
Um, how do we interpret the nonverbal facial tics and features when we can't see whether people are smiling or frowning or what's happening on their cheeks?
Great question. So my ebook is called Emotions Behind the Mask, and everyone can find it at emotionsbehindthemask.com.
Cool.
And what I talk about is what you can see. So as you said, from the nose to the chin cannot be seen, but you can see the eyes, you can see the eyebrows, and you can see the forehead. So those tiny minuscule movements that are made in the eyes, eyebrows, and forehead can reveal so much about how someone is feeling in the moment. For example, if somebody is angry and their eyebrows go down and into a straight line, that lets you know someone is feeling a little hot at that moment,
Hmm.
right? When people get
Yeah.
angry, what happens a lot of times is they might squint their eyes a little bit, almost as a glare. That's a giveaway. When someone is confused or skeptical, this area in between the eyebrows, the inner two eyebrows, it furrows just a little bit.
Hmm.
So it's really important to know what you're seeing. So in my book, I also talk about body language because the facial expressions, they recur very fast within 1/15th of a second. And if you're not quite sure what you're reading on somebody's face, is their body language supporting what you're seeing in their face? So if somebody's happy, you wouldn't expect their body language to be one of anger, would you? No, because
Right.
it's a mismatch, it's
Yeah.
incongruent. So the facial expression and the body language should gel, they should vibe together. And when they do, then you have more confidence in what you're seeing. And a lot of times we're used to seeing the whole person, the whole face, and not just part of the face. And particularly now that everyone is wearing masks, it's important to analyze body language in conjunction with facial expressions, and listening to people's voices gives you a clearer picture of how they're feeling in the moment.
I love that. I'm going to be watching for that now. So, all right. So, a lot of us in this last year, I'm a very extroverted person, as you may have guessed.
Mm-hmm.
I love social outings. Not a huge like networking fan. I mean, I've done my share of networking on a professional level for a long time because it's just a necessary evil for what I do
Mm-hmm.
or what I've done over the years. I have found myself getting less comfortable in group social settings, and not because of COVID, but just because of lack of experience. If you haven't done something in a while, when you
Mm,
start doing it again, you're uncomfortable.
sure.
Can you talk to those of us who might be in that same situation where, maybe we were rock stars in that environment before COVID and that we thrived in those situations? I have talked to a lot of people who share that same feeling I do of what's it going to be like when I have to go back to these networking sessions and masks or no masks. Let's assume no masks for a while because I get we're going to get to that point again,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully fairly soon. What, how do you watch for those nonverbal cues? I tend to ask a lot of long questions. Um, one of the things I noticed or I heard in a training several years ago was if you're standing with someone in like a bar and their foot turns out, it's sort of their subtle way of saying, okay, I'm done with you. I'm moving on to the next. Is there any truth to that, or are there other things like that that we can look for?
Yes, and there is a lot of truth to that. Your feet tend to be one of the most honest parts of your
Hmm.
body. Your feet take you in the direction that you want to go. So if your feet are not pointing to someone you're talking to, or their feet aren't pointing in your direction, but one foot starts turning towards the exit or away from
Hmm.
you, that lets you know that they're thinking about wrapping up the
Like wrap it up,
conversation.
wrap it up.
Yep,
Yeah,
wrap it up.
yeah,
Absolutely. There is some truth
yeah.
to that. Actually, there's a lot of truth
So there's a lot
to
of
that.
power in being able to read this, not only to tell what other people might or might not be thinking, but also make you a better communicator too. If I can read the fact that you're turning your foot to the right as we're talking, it's going to go over pretty well with you if I figure out Blanca's ready to, go
Yeah,
hand her business card to the next guy or go grab a drink or just get away from me. So
right.
it's that
And then
person
you,
that can't read that.
uh-huh. And then you can say, hey, Blanca, it's great chatting with you. I know you want to get to some other people. Let's link up soon.
Yeah,
And I'm
I
like,
like
oh my
that.
gosh, he could read my mind. No,
Wow, you read my, yeah, exactly. I
it's
love
not
it. That's
that.
really
It's
cool.
that
And then
you
your
read
toe
body
turns back. It's
language.
like, okay, this guy gets me. I think I'll
Mhm.
stay here for a minute.
It
Yeah, that's
absolutely can
awesome.
happen.
Yeah, I've seen that happen too. All right, so I told you at the beginning, and I told most of my folks I talk to that the purpose of the podcast is to get to the why. I know your story. Can you share just a little bit of how you chose this profession, when you realized that this was going to be the direction for your career, and maybe if that takes you back to your experiences as a child?
Mhm.
I know it was not the you and I didn't have the same childhood by any stretch. What can you share there?
Yeah. I never knew that this was what I was going to do for my life. I didn't know I was going to be a body language expert, but my training really started when I was a little girl. I was abused, and I spent a lot of my childhood scared, and I didn't know who I could trust. But one thing that I figured out early on is that if I paid attention to people's movements and their reactions, they unknowingly reveal who they are and what their intentions are. And that was one way I could protect myself, was really watching someone. And there was no way for me to know at that time that surviving that trauma of my childhood would lead into a successful career as an internationally recognized body language expert. And when I grew up, I went to graduate school and I got a master's degree in psychology and formal training with very well respected body language and detecting deception experts. And here I am. I've combined the two.
How have the experiences you had as a child made you a better mom?
It has it has changed. I'm not sure I had a perspective of what momhood was going to be for me until I had my first child. And my first child is my daughter. And when she was born, everything changed. Because
Hmm.
growing up, I'm just telling you the tip of the iceberg of what I
Yeah.
experienced, but other things happened in my childhood and in my adolescence. But when I had her, that it was just this moment of clarity of where I couldn't be the mom I wanted to be if I wasn't willing to step into those shoes. So this is where I had to really tactfully, but yet assertively stick up for what I believe in and for my daughter. And it changed everything. My mom, we are South American, and my mother calls
Hmm.
me La Madre Leona, which in Spanish means the mother lion, because
Hmm.
that is how she saw me with my daughter and then with my son after he was born, where I wanted to make sure whatever I experienced, they never experienced. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't going to have some type of suffering in their life, that they weren't going to meet some obstacles. It's silly to think that life is full of obstacles.
We
But I'm
can't
talking
completely
about,
protect our
no,
kids,
you
right? Yeah,
can't. But to protect them from what I went through, absolutely.
sure.
And they never experienced anything that I went through, which I'm really happy of and proud about.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in North Carolina, actually, is where I spent
Okay.
the majority of my
Yeah.
life. hmm I'm the first American born in my family.
Nice.
hmm
Pero hablas español, right? You speak
Sí, yo
Spanish?
hablo español.
Okay.
hmm
We thought about doing this interview in Spanish because there is an audience out there for that. And I might do a few podcasts in Spanish at some point, just for the fun of it.
It'd be a lot
But
of fun.
yeah, I've done, bits and pieces here and there. What was your
hmm
teenage years like? So you've come out of this pretty difficult childhood where you were abused, as you mentioned. Um, I'd love to see. I know a lot of people who were, and I know what they do now. You're the first I've met who has taken those experiences and really parlayed it into what you do professionally. Um, Take us through the transition. You've had this rough young childhood. You're now a teenager. You've got friends. You're growing up in North Carolina, a very conservative kind of Bible Belt area of our country. Um, what was that transition like? When did you feel safe?
I didn't feel safe until after I was out of high school.
Oh,
Earlier, I said I was telling you the tip of the iceberg, and I said
yeah.
childhood and adolescence,
Hmm.
all of it.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, that does not mean there weren't happy moments in my childhood. I mean, come on, there were.
Sure. Yeah.
However, there was a lot of bad stuff that happened that really took a toll on my self confidence and who I could trust, how I spoke up or didn't speak up for myself. I didn't even realize I had a voice, like it even mattered. When I was
Right.
abused, it started when I was 3 years old. That's pretty young.
Oh, yeah. And you don't have a voice, and you can't tell
No.
that 3-year-old what to do because a 3-year-old can't decipher what that means. What
No.
would you tell the 13-year-old you, though, who still didn't feel safe, and now you sort of have a voice? What would you tell yourself if you could do something differently then, or just a 13-year-old girl going through this today? What do you tell her?
Yeah, I would have to talk about somebody else because, like I said, there were different bad thing and abuses that happened through
Yeah, and I'm not
childhood
trying
and
to open up any
adolescence.
cans by any stretch either. I'm just, using all of our experiences are not just for our own good, but for the good of others as well.
That's exactly
So
right. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't going to benefit
exactly.
somebody else.
Yeah. So what do you
So,
tell that 13-year-old who might not feel safe at home for whatever reason?
oh, that's a tough one. But I would
Yeah.
let them know that eventually it gets better and it might get worse before it gets better. When you're 13 and you're dependent on parents, you're stuck. There aren't a lot of 13-year-olds who can be emancipated and be able to work and take care of themselves. It's just not realistic. It just doesn't happen. I'm not going to say never, but it's pretty rare.
Right. Yeah.
And for young people who are in these situations, it's going to get better. No, we don't know when, but you also have to keep fighting. You have to fight the fight because you're worth it. I don't
Yeah.
care what anybody else says, no matter what you're up against, you are worth it. And you have to push through all those obstacles to get to the other side, even if it takes time.
I
13
love
to
that.
18, that's 5 years of dependence.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a long
You
time.
you and I look back at that and it's, snap the fingers because it's been a couple of years. When you're in it, when you're in the forest, all you see is trees.
It's very
We look
difficult.
back, we see the whole forest and we know what the exit is like and what it's
Well,
going to
as
be
someone
like.
who
So,
went through it, you wonder if it's ever going to end. I'll just be
yeah.
frank with you,
Yeah.
Ed. You really do. You wonder, is this ever going to end? Why won't it stop?
Yeah. When we talked before in the interview that we weren't able to share, not because of anything that was said, but because technology, as I alluded to earlier,
Hmm.
we hit some really, really great, powerful things. And I'd like to maybe not recreate it because that's hard to do, but go back to some of the things that we talked about. In this time that we've been in, staying on that topic of safety and not feeling safe, there are a lot of people, and I'm not going to just blanket it and say children and women, but that's
Hmm.
predominantly, that's the area where a lot of the abuse does take place because kids haven't been in school and maybe wives haven't been able to leave their homes. I've heard statistics that are, I'm not even going to share what they are because I don't know what's true and what's not. I'll just say that I've heard statistics that the amount of abuse is a lot higher because people are home more. What what can we look for? What nonverbal things can I look for in the women and children around me to just open my eyes to my employees or my neighbors or others that might be crying out for help but don't have the voice to say something?
That's a fantastic question. I'm happy that you asked it. And I do want to clarify one thing. It's not that people are home, it's the stresses of what being
It's
home
everything else.
means.
Yeah, true. Good point. Sorry. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And for signs to look for, and even if you don't know anyone's baseline behavior, when someone is always speaking for them,
Hmm.
that if someone cannot, even children can speak for themselves.
Yeah.
So if someone isn't allowing, we'll just go with women and children since that's the example you started with. If they're not speaking for themselves or they're looking at their partner as if to get permission and the partner nods or makes facial expressions. Also, you can get a sense if someone is comfortable. Normally, when you're around somebody that you don't like, you're not going to be very relaxed. It'd be
Mm-hmm.
very typical for someone to move just a little bit. So you notice what I did with my body? See,
I
I'm like
did.
right in the
Yeah.
center of the camera and I just moved, even if it's a half an
Mm-hmm.
inch away from the person. Or there's a part of my body that cringes up a little bit, or I tilt my head away from that person. All those subtleties. Feet, you bring feet up. You brought feet up
Mm-hmm.
earlier. Look at their feet. Even though they might be looking at you or talking to their person, whoever, if it's a dad or a husband, partner, whomever, but their feet are moving in a different direction away from that person. Listen to their voice. Is it flat? Is there no animation in it? No peaks and valleys? So
Yeah.
those are signs. Do they need permission? Do they feel like they need permission before they talk, or do they say, I'm not sure my partner is really going to like that? And there's a difference in wanting to be respectful of what your partner likes and doesn't like versus really needing permission or being fearful of what their response might be. One thing that you probably will not see, a lot of people don't come out and tell you that something really bad is happening. That's
Yeah.
very threatening. It's embarrassing and humiliating to admit. And two, particularly if you can't change the situation, it does generate a lot of fear and anxiety. So many times people won't say what's happening.
The first interview I did for the podcast was about the fourth or fifth episode that I aired.
Mm-hmm.
Denise Brown, sister, and I can openly talk about this. Denise is the sister of Nicole Brown Simpson. Mm-hmm. Right away, obviously, you know where I'm going. For those that don't know, 1994, O.J. Simpson allegedly, because he was found not guilty in the criminal trial, but guilty in the civil, murdered his ex-wife and Ron Goldman, her friend. Mm-hmm. Denise talked a lot in that interview, and I've known Denise for several years prior to, and obviously since the interview. A lot of things that she saw in Nicole that she wishes she would have stepped up and said something. I don't think she feels responsible in any way, mm-hmm. but just, we always look back and go, gosh, if only I would have. What advice do you have? And again, maybe we're crossing into an area that's not your level of expertise, but since we're here, I'll ask. Mm-hmm. What advice for those of us who may know someone where we suspect that something is happening? What's a good way for us to approach that person without, because like you said, they may just bottle up, or they may not be truthful, or they may, oh, nothing's really wrong, we're okay. Oh, he just had a bad day, or I slipped and fell.
Make excuses.
All of that stuff. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. What can we do to try to help, if nothing else? If we can't stop it, how can we at least help?
One, you may not be able to stop it, but you can get somebody to intervene. And that's where the police come in. That's where law enforcement comes in. And particularly with children, every adult has an ethical and moral responsibility to protect children. You do not have to have evidence that a child is being physically abused or neglected. That's not your job. You just have to report it. And you have to make sure that you're not just saying, well, it just seems to be. Okay, you don't have to have evidence, but you have to say, this is what I'm noticing, and be specific. And then you let the authorities handle it. They will figure it out. But when you're talking to somebody who you think might be abused or neglected, you really want to come from a place of compassion and no judgment.
Yeah.
How could you?
How could you stay with them? How could you? Yeah.
That is for nobody to speak. You don't know what kind of life they have. There are things it's called trauma bonding. Again, I have a master's in psychology, so I can speak to this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's trauma bonding. There's so many different psychological variables that go into this. But you have to come from this at a place of compassion, one of caring. And you let them know that you were there. And you let them know that, this is what I'm noticing. I could be off. I want you to know I'm here. I love you. I support you. If there's anything I can do, call me anytime. But if you say whatever you say, you have to make sure you mean. So if you're going to tell somebody, call me at 3:00 in the morning, then be available at 3:00 in the morning.
And they call and you don't answer. No, well, I guess they just meant, it's like, how you doing? Well, I don't really mean how you doing. It's like, I'm just seeing you and walking
Exactly.
By, so.
But it's really coming from that place of caring and compassion, and you want to do something to make a difference. But then also come with some solutions. It's one thing to say, I wish I could do something, versus, there's a shelter and I know such and such, or this shelter such and such. Let me tell you what services they have for other people in your situation. That's giving somebody hope.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have all the answers.
Solution-minded rather than just identify.
Exactly.
Anybody can identify the problem.
You have to be able to offer a solution, a path, hope.
Yeah.
They need hope. It's very scary, exceedingly scary to leave a situation like that for a multitude of reasons.
Right.
And it isn't for anyone to judge. Right. How they're going to survive. And they have children. And what if their partner is saying, you even think about leaving this house or leaving me, you will never see your children again.
Yeah.
Whoa. You can't tell a mother that.
Oh, we had a real life experience of that with a friend of a friend in the last year. Just a woman that someone in our family used to work with knows someone who knows someone. I mean, I'm not, divulging anything because I don't remember the names, but
that's fine. Yeah, I get it.
We got pretty heavily involved, and we got police involved, and we we were trying, my wife and I and sister-in-law, we were really trying to find solutions for this woman, and I think it turned out good.
That's
All right, you
good.
said hope, so let's get rid
You
of
have
some
to,
gray skies now.
yeah, you
Yeah,
have to give people hope. And you
yeah,
have to think
definitely.
there's all kinds of threats also. You tell anyone what's happening,
Yeah,
I'll kill the kids, I'll kill the dog, I'll do whatever. You'll
right.
lose your job.
You have to take
You
these threats
don't
seriously.
know. The thing is you
Right.
don't know. So I'm really giving a lot of examples because I want people to think it isn't as simple as saying, why are you there? Why don't you just pick up and leave? People need
Yeah,
support, people need hope, and they need solutions.
yeah.
And then it's going to require a lot of patience on your part because they might make a decision that's contrary to what you believe is best for them.
Hmm. And once you engage, you got to stay engaged.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, you don't
definitely.
have to have the proof. That's the authority's job.
Right.
You have a strong enough suspicion, and you can talk to the authorities and saying, I'm seeing X, Y, and Z. This is what's happening. They'll
Right.
decide whether there's enough information there to investigate. But again, that's their job. Your job is if you see something that you're really concerned about and have strong suspicions, is to report it. That's how anyone can help.
Yeah. Awesome.
Being quiet doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate that. That's really, really great wisdom that you're sharing. And it's applicable. I think we all know someone. Maybe not today, but we have known or will come across someone where we might have a suspicion or even more than a suspicion of something going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's shift into happiness for a minute here. We've had the dark, and that's a fantastic and valuable use of your skill set. And thank you for sharing that, because I hope that even if one person listening today, when we air this, will start to think about, and don't start suspecting everybody, but start being a little bit more mindful of what might be happening around you, because not everybody's life is that Facebook post where everything's great, like we talked about. There's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff right now. Let's talk about some of the fun, cool things you've been able to do in your role. You talked at the beginning in the introduction about some of the shows you've been on. Talk about the Steve Harvey experience. I saw you on there, not when it was on, but in my
Mm-hmm.
research to getting ready to interview you, I've watched a lot of the YouTube things you've been on. I'd love to hear just about. He seems like a really fun guy. Obviously, I mean, great sense of humor and really fun to be around. But what can you share about that experience of how you got the invite to be on Steve Harvey, the show itself, just your experiences of that? That's pretty fun.
I've been very blessed to be on as
Yeah,
many shows as I have been on, to meet the people that I have, and to be able to change lives the way that I do on big platforms. And TV shows is one of the platforms because it reaches millions and millions of people. And I had wanted to be on Steve Harvey's show for like 5 years,
hmm
5 years. And then I get an email from one of his producers, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me right now.
Is it April Fool's Day right now or
Right.
what?
I was like,
Yeah.
holy smoke. And they reached out and I said yes. And then we started working on a segment, and I flew out to the West Coast. He was filming in LA at that time. And it was fantastic. He is very personable. He is
Hmm.
very funny, very charismatic, and he's a gentleman. He
Yeah,
is a
seems like it.
gentleman. I'm very traditional, and he's just a gentleman. And I appreciate that. And I will give you an example of what I'm talking about. So I did two segments with him. These were pre-recorded. So we did one segment on one stage, and then we had to walk down some steps onto another stage. And he started walking and he stopped and he looked at me and he put his hand out.
I was
You go
waiting for that.
first.
Yeah,
You go first. And I was like, wow.
yeah,
And that makes an impression. That
sure.
makes an impression. It leaves a lasting impression to me of him as a person and as a man. And he's a gentleman and he's funny. He's super
Yeah,
funny. I just believe it's just part of Steve. It's like breathing for him. It's just
yeah.
supernatural.
Yeah, I
And he's
loved when
great. He's great.
we remember the Miss Universe competition a few years ago where he inadvertently announced the wrong winner,
Mhm.
and I remember him. I read somewhere that he tweeted out when we weren't sure who had won the presidential election. Hey, does anybody need me to announce the winner? That's just that sense of humor. I love that. I didn't see it myself, but I heard about it, and it's
Mhm.
still months later it makes me crack up. What That show was on dating, right? At least one
Yes,
of the
it was
two that you did.
dating and body
Yeah.
language. So I was
So let's
giving,
talk about that a little bit for those that are dating right now. What can they look for? We've all been dating. We've all wondered, does she like me or does he like me? Any just, there's no, again, no 100%, 0%. I get that. But obviously this stuff works or you wouldn't be doing what you do. What advice would you give to that person to really try to figure out if the person that maybe they've been on a couple of dates with, or they're trying to figure out, is this a good fit? What take us back to that show or just anything that comes to mind for you in that particular situation?
yeah, I'll take you back to the show. So there was
Cool.
a young woman whose friend, they were both on the show, and one friend said that her friend just comes across, I guess unapproachable would be the right word. And when men want to approach her, she's like
Hmm.
very skeptical. Well, that will turn anyone off, right? Because if you're looking at someone who's smiling and relaxed versus someone who's scowling at you, who are you going to walk to? Duh,
Right.
the person who's smiling and relaxed. And so I say this because it starts in your approach. Are you approachable? What is it that you're saying with your body language that's either magnetic and pulling someone towards you, or that's repulsive and or pushing them away? So that's what you have to think about. So if you're relaxed and you're smiling and you look at somebody in their eye and you say hello, then someone's going to be like, wow, okay, I think she's
Yeah.
approachable. Let me go and say hello. Or he, it doesn't have to necessarily be the
Hmm.
woman, but you just want to make sure that you're approachable. So your body language is exceedingly important. So I talked about that on the show. And then the second segment was real time correcting body language on a simulated date. So there was a young man who was an actor. I believe he was an actor. And they had a simulated date on set. And in real time, I would watch and I would stop
Hmm.
and say, this is
You were
what you're
coaching them
showing.
along. That was fun to watch. Yeah.
And then real time saying, hey, this is what I'm noticing. And this is what message it's saying. So why don't you try this? And it was fabulous. That really helps. You have to pay attention to your body language.
Yeah.
And people
Well,
don't do that because they're so focused on the other person. Is the person liking me? Is the person into me? Are they attracted to me? But your whatever vibes you're dishing, somebody else is dishing back.
yeah. Kind of like we told our kids when they were young before they started dating and eventually getting married, be the type of person that you're looking for.
Exactly.
Worry more about what you're projecting than what you're seeing. So, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
like that a lot. I like that. Other shows, Dr. Oz, some of the other things you've been on. What's a really great day to you? I mean, I would imagine obviously getting a chance to do shows like that is fun, and being able to really see transition and transformation in your clients and the people you're around. Are there days where you just look back, whether you journal or not, I don't know, but I mean, are there days you look back and go, wow, that was a great day, and then suddenly see a thread or a common denominator to what makes those great days for you?
Excellent question. And I don't really see it as days. I just see it as experiences, and my
Hmm.
experiences are over time. Not all
Yeah.
good experiences happen in one day. You can have something wonderful happen in a day,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
And then,
then, yeah, and then something
yeah.
not so wonderful happens. So for me, it's just experiences over time that I look at. And sometimes when I feel like I'm not achieving enough or I'm not where I want to be in my career, in my business, that's where I have to stop and challenge myself. And I have to think, all right, Blanca, what have you done?
Mm-hmm.
And then just
Yeah.
think about it. And it's like, whoa, okay. I
Yeah.
went from a stay at home mom to an internationally recognized body language expert, being rated top 30 in the world on this show, on
Mm-hmm.
that show, meeting these people, having these experiences. And it's like, all right, the point is you have to put things back in perspective for yourself. And you have to
Right.
challenge the way that you're thinking. And that's what I do with myself. So any advice that I give somebody else, it's the same advice I use for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I practice what I preach, as a
Yeah.
cliche goes.
Yeah. Physician heal thyself, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. You can prescribe all day long, but what about you? So,
Exactly.
what's that big, hairy, audacious goal out there for you still? I mean, you obviously, there are moments I get from what you just said that you feel like sort of quote unquote I've arrived. But I
Hmm.
mean, what are some things where you still look out there and go, wow, and not that you're like, I won't be happy until, I get that that's not your personality at all. You are happy every day because you're making a difference and have a great family and wonderful things going on in your world, especially given where you came from.
Hmm.
But what's out there now? What are some of the big things out there that you still hope to accomplish?
My nirvana is to co-host a show, whether it's a TV show or whether it's an online show.
Cool.
That is my nirvana. And co-hosting, I think, would be wonderful. I play well off of people. I'm not
Hmm.
funny. Like I could not be a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
I
You could work
couldn't.
well with
That's
Steve
not in me.
Harvey. You would
But
have
I can
fun.
play off of people. That's one of my
Yeah.
strengths. I can play off of people. So co-hosting would be fun. And I like having different perspectives
Yeah.
because not everything is just done one way. There's more than one solution to a problem. There's more than one way to see a situation. And having a master's degree in psychology, plus my expertise in body language and detecting deception, with almost 9 years of television experience on all these different shows, that really helps me be a disruptor for a
Yeah.
show. So whether it's a TV show or an online show, because I can provide a different perspective, and almost everybody's fascinated with body language.
Yeah. My
It's almost
mind is
it,
racing now.
yeah, it's like it truly is a superpower, and people don't realize it, but yet more and more people are talking about body language.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like I was saying, my mind is racing now of all these different people and these ideas. And I just, I can create a lot of great ideas in my head. It's then getting it out of my mouth or on paper
Oh,
that's when it just kind of dies on the vine to a certain
uh-huh.
extent. But I can definitely see you. Is there a dream co-host? Anybody you've thought about? Right away I went to Steve Harvey because of the experience you just shared. I can totally see that chemistry working really well
I can
because
too, actually.
yeah, yeah, that would be really awesome. Is there somebody you've thought about, or is there anybody you've approached that you can talk about in
I
something
have
like
not
that?
I've not approached anyone, and Steve Harvey, it would be a great person to co-host with. That's a great question. I don't think I have an
Yeah,
answer because I really haven't given it a lot of thought.
yeah,
But I would like somebody who obviously there's some great camera chemistry with, right? Because you
hmm,
have to be able to play off of each other and just have this really great synergy. But also topics also. So Steve Harvey's a natural fit just because he talks a lot about relationships, and a lot about
yeah.
what I talk about and help people has to do with relationships. But I have to give that some thought.
And there aren't many people I've seen on TV that have such amazing nonverbal responses to things. Just watching him host Family Feud, for example. Somebody gives an answer, and I laugh. Most of the laughing I do when I watch that show is watching his face or his
Oh,
body language.
absolutely.
He's amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That is a show my son and I would watch a lot of, is Family
yeah,
Feud. And it was
yeah,
hysterical. Of course, we'd like to answer the questions
yeah. Me
also.
too. Yeah, but certainly he's just the perfect host for something like that.
He is.
So
He
yeah.
is. He's
How
very
do people get in
charismatic.
touch with you? I know there's so many, and we have time, but I mean, best way for people to reach you, because I know you not only all the things we've just talked about, but you do a lot of keynote speaking. You do a
I
lot of
do.
consulting for large organizations all over the world. You are obviously on TV and Megan Kelly and Dr. Oz
Hmm.
and Steve Harvey and a lot of these amazing shows that we've all watched and continue to. What are some of the big things that you'd like to see happen in your career, and how can we reach you, and who's that big, like that big target audience that you'd really like to reach more of, or that you haven't reached yet?
Great question. I feel like I hit a lot of different people just because it's body language that does the calling. Because body
Hmm.
language fits any industry, any type of person. You cannot
Yeah,
have interaction without body language, whether you're in person or you're on the phone. You just can't. And so I feel like I reach a lot of different people. One way that I help people now is I help people not suck on TV. There's so many people
oh,
who want to get on television, or
that's what's
people,
in my notes next. How not to suck on video. I was going to go there next.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then
So
how not to suck on video also. So TV and video. There's some people who want to be on television shows, and there are people who are making their videos to promote themselves, their products, their companies, their services, but how do they do it? So I take the people who feel awkward and don't want to sound or look stupid on camera or not sure what to say. So I take you from being a mess to being calm, confident, and charismatic on camera. And those people who get booked on television, that's only half the battle. Because
mhm.
then what? You get booked, but it's up to you
Yeah,
to be engaging, to be
yeah,
educational, informative, right? To be charming and charismatic. That's up to you. But how do you do that? So I tell people, I don't get you booked on TV. I help keep you on
yeah.
TV.
Harder to stay on top than it is to get there.
Exactly.
A lot of teams can win one championship. It's real hard to win two.
Exactly.
So, yeah. All right,
And
let
with
me put my, oh, go ahead.
almost 1,000 TV segments, that puts me in a great position. And I've worked with a lot of different people
Right.
also, a lot of different news directors and hosts and producers. I really have a bird's eye view, behind the scenes look at what works and what doesn't look. And pretty much anything that can happen live on TV has happened to me.
Yeah. What about just these Zoom calls that we're all on right now? And again, hopefully we're transitioning into some more, I think we're going to be hybrid at least for a while, but what's some coaching you can give to people like myself or others that are hosting a lot of Zoom calls or just whether it's work or podcast? I'll put my thick skin on for a second here. Coach me. We've spent 2 hours together in the last couple of interviews. What advice would you give me on how to be better on camera other than just be better looking, which I'm working on, but trying to lose weight, but what are some coaching that you would just give me, for example?
I think you're very charismatic and friendly, and you get asked some really good questions, and that is really important. The one thing that I would suggest is you give your guest breathing room to finish talking before you ask the next question or before you share your thought. When that doesn't happen, what happens is you can miss out on a nugget of information. So that would be my suggestion.
Great suggestion. And the reason I know it's a great one is because I've heard it a lot. Give me a chance to talk or finish my thought. I'm
Yep.
that guy that, I fill thinking space with just words.
Hmm.
Whereas a lot of people, my wife, you, a lot of other people, you're processing, and I need to just allow that to happen. So thank you. That's great advice that I'm going to try to do a much better job of following.
You are welcome. But
No,
I
really.
think you ask good questions and you're great with rapport. And that's really important because having your guests feel comfortable. And so for podcasters out there, whether you're just audio or if it's also visual and you post it on YouTube, how can you make a connection with your guest? And that is how I help people when they're on Zoom. I help you connect with people anywhere, any place, anytime. And a lot of it has to do with body language. Sometimes it isn't what you say, it's how you say it and what you're showing that brings somebody to you, that makes people want to lean in and listen and talk to you more. And as a host, that's what you want because the success of your podcast is based on your guests, your quality of guests, the topics, and the conversation. And that's where I help. So I do help bring out the best in people when they're on camera, whether it's Zoom or virtual or whether it's for television. And that's a strength of mine. I know how to do that.
Yeah, you're definitely good at that. I definitely, even before we met, just watching you on video, it's like that's somebody that I'd really like to get to know because not only can I benefit and learn, like you just coached me, which is awesome. I really appreciate that. I
You're welcome.
went, like I said before we recorded, I went on a Roger Love Clubhouse thing a week or two ago and was fortunate enough to get on stage and ask him, and he gave me some coaching. And I'm probably not doing any of it, but I'm striving to get better. But you're right. The joy of doing these podcasts for me is you and Denise Brown and Ken Blanchard, and I could name 60 plus other guests that I've had. It's how many people get to record conversations with intriguing people. I mean, anybody can. I'm doing it. Buy a microphone and a laptop, and there you go. But what I've learned from my guests to this point has changed my life. I mean, 62 guests now with you today over the last year of just recorded conversations and wisdom and insight and entertainment and laughter and some tears along the way as well has really been powerful for me. And my hope is that not only people that are listening now, but my kids and grandkids or others will, this is almost kind of a time capsule, if you will, of what's important for me in my life right now. So, all right, I started to ask earlier, how do people get in touch with you? Because a lot of my audience are going to want to know, how do I reach this person? How do I engage you to maybe the person listening today has the perfect show in mind for you. I got ideas.
Love it.
I'm thinking of international. I'm thinking of watching a show in another language that you don't speak and being able to pick up on what they're saying with their nonverbal. I can just see you watching like some Chinese TV show and saying what they're really saying is. I think
right.
Cool. Anyway, so how do we reach you?
BlancaCobb.com. That is my website. and on social media. I'm on Clubhouse, Instagram, Twitter, all at Blanca Cobb, and then YouTube and Facebook at Blanca Cobb, body language expert. That's how people can reach me. Or you can send me an email at blanca@blancacobb.com. And I would love for your viewers to reach out and connect and ask questions. And I'd love to be able to help some people be calm, confident, and charismatic on camera.
I'd like to invite invite you to speak to my clientele too. Like I said, all my clients are family businesses, and we do at least once a month and sometimes twice a month workshops. Right now, Zoom, and eventually we'll get to in person. And when that
Sure.
happens, I want to fly you out here and have you speak in person to my audience. I think that'd be fantastic. I've seen some
I
of the
would
things
love
you've
it.
done with big audiences. That would be cool.
Thank you. I would love that.
What I hate to say what didn't we talk about that you want to talk about, but is there anything when you agreed to be a guest on my show, was there any specific hope that you had other than, yeah, this would be kind of cool? But I mean, is there any message out there that you have that you'd like to share that maybe we haven't gotten deep enough into today?
I think we did a good job. I mean, talking about childhood and how that impacted me as a mom and giving people hope. I think that's important. People need hope. If people don't have hope, they don't have anything. That's my
Yeah,
opinion. Because it
yeah,
gives you something to look forward to, it gives you a reason to move on. If you feel like you're never going to get another glass of water, what are you going to do? You'll give up. But if that's that hope that you can get water, you're going to keep trying until you get that water.
yeah.
So hope is just so important. And then talking about how to be better on camera and a little bit of the shows I'm on and segments that I've done. Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. I can't think of anything right now, unless you can.
What do you do for fun when you're not
Oh,
working? And I know you have an amazing family and your kids and so forth. What does Blanca do for Blanca? What do you do to take care of yourself?
I love to read and
Hmm.
I love to watch shows. So music lyrics and movie lines are like my life. And I know that sounds nuts, but it's an escape. It's
Hmm.
an escape. Music really resonates with me. Of course, the beat that draws me in, but it's the lyrics that keep me. So many times the lyrics reflect what's happening in that artist's life, something that they've seen or they've witnessed or they felt. And it makes it so relatable to other people. And when those lyrics call to me, it's like, wow, that's really powerful. And the same with movies. Movies are an escape from real life for a little bit. And I watch a lot of different types of genres. I'm not into sci-fi though. That's a hard one for me. And I don't do the horror movies anymore because I did that when I was little and scared myself
Yeah,
half to death. And so I
yeah,
don't
me
do
too.
those.
I don't want to be scared. Yeah.
Right, I don't either. But drama and I love romance. So I love love.
Mm. Yeah.
That really calls to my heart. So I like music and I like movies and I do like to read. A lot of the reading that I do is for self-development to get better at what I do, understanding people better because life is about relationships. Life is about people, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
I
are
just
successful when you're successful with people. People buy
100%.
products. People buy services. People make life go round. People help people. People help you get to where you want to go. It's crazy when people aren't people. When people aren't people, and when
When
people
you're not
don't
people, yeah,
help
people are
people.
people. How many times do we say that, right? Yeah. Say
Right.
that
Well,
3 times fast. Say that 1 time slow. Yeah.
a tongue twister.
Yeah. No, I was just
But,
talking with a friend of mine who's in the banking industry yesterday
uh-huh.
about how we bank with people, not with banks. We associate with
So
people
true.
that we enjoy being around, regardless of where they work. So if a banker moves to another bank,
Absolutely.
I'm going to go with him.
Hmm.
Excuse me. Okay, so that yeah, and I'm all about relationships. I just did a weekend class for some high school students the last 3 weekends, and we ended on a discussion about core values. And I took them through an exercise on identifying their one core value. For me, it's always
Mm,
relationships. It always comes back to people.
it does.
Um,
It absolutely
okay,
does.
so book, movie, song, Deserted Island. You know where I'm going. You get to take one of each: a book that you read over and over, or a band or a singer you enjoy, and a movie that you could just watch over and over. For me, the book,
Mm,
if it's not the Bible, it's probably um, something by either Stephen Covey or Ken Blanchard. Those are the types of authors, leadership authors I love.
mhm.
Music, Dave Matthews, most likely. movie Shawshank Redemption. Anytime that comes on
Ooh,
TV, I'm just going to
great
watch
movie.
it over and over. Any any
Great movie.
any or all of those three, not those my choices, but I mean for you, book, movie, music that you take with you.
I don't think I have a particular book or particular movie or particular artist. I'm really eclectic. I learn so much from other people. So
Yeah.
there's many I enjoy. I just don't have like one. I am a huge Michael Bublé fan. I
Hmm.
love Michael Bublé's
Yeah.
music. Absolutely love his music.
It's the romantic in you, right?
Yes,
He's a great
I'm
singer
very
too.
romantic.
I love
I
a lot
am.
of his music on my phone too.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. Um, Great question. Don't have a solid answer for you.
Fair enough. Not all great questions have great answers. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I do have one.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was
Oh,
going to give you my final question, but you're ready to
oh,
keep going, so let's keep going.
yeah. There's one thing I guess we haven't really talked about that brings me a lot of joy are helping young women who are in high school, teenagers. I lived through so much.
Yeah.
And I understand those types of relationships, teenage relationships and teenage friendships. And one thing that I believe that young people don't get enough of, and this boys and girls, is what really makes a boy a man when it comes in relationships, and what really makes a girl a woman when it comes in relationships. The responsibility that that carries. And it's not only about your happiness, it's about your partner's happiness. But then taking it one step further, I do believe people at all ages stay in relationships that don't suit them anymore, that have run its course, where they're not respected, they're not appreciated, and they stay because that's all they know or don't realize that there are other options out there.
Yeah.
And that is a passion of mine, particularly when it comes to young women not being with the wrong young men, letting go faster so that way you're not brought down and then you're leaving it open for the right boys, the right young men to come in your life. And
I like
again, what
that a
does this
lot.
boil
Yeah.
down to? Relationships, no
Relationships.
matter
There
what.
you go. Look
It's
at that. The R
relationships.
word.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Relationships. And I believe
You
in
do.
chivalry. I believe in chivalry.
Well,
I'm
you
very
mentioned it with
traditional, like
Steve
I
Harvey.
said. Yes. And
That was the word that came to mind. Yeah.
my son who is 16, it is raising him to be chivalrous. And it's difficult because it's just not a lot of what happens with friends of his. Opening doors, they're like, what's that? Of course, I'm gonna
Hmm.
open the door for me. Can't you open the door for yourself? No.
Yeah.
No. I believe in chivalry. I will always believe in chivalry. And it's teaching him a way to respect. And you heard me say earlier, and it goes for both boys and girls, being respected. That's one way to show respect is to be chivalrous. That's my opinion, and I stick with it.
Well, it's a good one. Like I share that opinion. Whether it's a good one or not, I agree with you. So it must be a great one if we both agree with that. No, and I've
That's
heard
right.
said too, and yeah, absolutely. Great minds think alike, right?
Hmm.
And so do we. No, but
That's right.
one of the things that I've heard said a lot is if you want to see how a young man's going to treat you, watch how he treats his mom or his
Absolutely.
sisters. And he
Hmm.
has a mom and a sister. So those girls out there that are interested in your son, watch how he treats you and his sister because that's important.
That's still a work in progress.
Well, of course, we all are. I'm 57. Trust me, I'm just getting started when it comes to figuring all of that out. So,
Hmm.
I've mom and two sisters and my wife and two daughters, and definitely have an opportunity to be chivalrous as much as I possibly can. Opening doors is still a big thing for me.
Yeah.
You do. So you talked about your work with young people. I know you have some foundation work that you do. Can you talk a little bit about where you spend kind of your volunteer time, and then I'll ask you my last question.
Volunteer time has really been on hold because of the pandemic, but
Sure.
I support a lot of different charities. Um, that is important to me. And I've gotten involved with the Sanctuary House
Hmm.
here in my hometown, and it's a nonprofit organization that really tries to destigmatize mental health issues. And their platform is to really help people who have mental health illnesses thrive in life. And I've done some volunteer work for them. And I'm a big supporter.
Your life is amazing. You do so many wonderful things, and it's so easy for me to see from the beginning of this interview to now, and the time we talked before, and the emails and everything, just how you love what you do because of the impact you get to have on other people. It goes back to relationships. It really
Yeah.
does. And I'm the same way. I mean, if I'm not in a position in my life where I get to be in relationship with people,
Mm-hmm.
I'm miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, my favorite thing about doing these interviews is, after an hour, I feel like I have a new friend. And I know I could go back to any of my previous 61 guests and text or call them now, and they'll take my call. And not because I'm anything amazing, but just we've clicked.
Right.
And I've had guests where I didn't click. But sometimes
That
I've gone
happens.
back, and those have been some of my favorite interviews. There was one in particular, and I won't share who it was, but I left my office here and went downstairs, and Lorianne, my wife, says, "How'd it go?" It's like, yeah, just don't feel like it was there. I didn't feel
Yeah.
like I had it. I didn't feel like that person was into it. But then when we went back on a drive and we listened to that interview, it was probably one of my favorites. And I think it's
That's
because that
awesome.
person really challenged me, and maybe I
Mm.
didn't like it, you know.
Mm.
So maybe I'll go back and
Indeed.
feel challenged on some of the things you shared too. And I asked for it. I asked for coaching, and you gave it to me, so I appreciate that. So,
You're
all right,
welcome.
podcast called From the Heart. My last name is Hart, so it didn't take me long to come up with the name for the podcast. But when I share with people why I do this, and I shared it with you on this interview as well, Blanca, that what you do is impressive, and I love it. And like I said, I've read every word of your website, and I've looked at a lot of the videos, and some of my guests I do more research than others because my guest is so intriguing to me, like you are with what you do.
Thank you.
And we talked a lot about the why, but I'm going to finish my interview with you today asking you what you've already done in the last hour and 15 minutes or so. And that is, I'm simply going to say, Blanca Cobb, what's in your heart?
Love is in my heart. I have a lot of love. And my love really is for my children. My children are everything to me. And the moment I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, because she's my firstborn, it was love. And it's my responsibility. I feel that it is my responsibility to shower them with my love and raise them to be the most happy and compassionate, empathetic people. Because again, as we talked about, life is about relationships, and they're going to be stronger and better when they have powerful and happy and healthy relationships with others. All that I do, the driving force is my children. I love them beyond anything. I can't explain it. Most parents feel that way for their kids, so I'm not unique in that sense. But my children are my drive. It's the love that I have for my children, the happiness, and not all moments are happy. They are children, but it's just the love. I can't explain how I feel. I know how I feel, and it is important to me that every day I show them and I tell them I love them. There's a running joke in our family. Mom, can you go one day without telling us you love us? My answer is no. And why would I? Why would I? I mean, it is important for me that they know no matter what, their mom loves them. I love them with everything I have. They have to know it and they have to feel it and they have to hear it. That is exceedingly important to me.